porn's become the norm, and lots of people even say that it's, you know, it can be good for you. But you know, can porn be harmful? And if so, like, when does it become harmful?
That's a good question. Yeah, I think porn inherently is harmful, and let me go back and again restate that the definition of pornography is any material designed to arouse you sexually. So this isn't like sex education videotapes or, you know, how to have a better sex life. I mean, this is just blatantly putting material out there to make a buck, you know, to basically drive consumers to websites or to the content, the material, with very little disregard for how it's affecting them. We didn't think, or the general consensus for a long time was, hey, it's just sex, and there's nothing wrong with sex, which I agree with. I mean, sex is a very natural part of all of us, of you know, we're created as sexual beings. So what can be wrong with this? Well, what happens in pornography is, in order to be able to continue to push the creation and release of dopamine in the brain, which is really where it acts, we now know so much more about the neurochemistry of the brain and how that's triggered during exposure to material like this. In order to satisfy the user, they have to continue to create increasing levels of content and material, material that is more arousing and more sexually stimulating. And so you start to push over boundaries of what's really considered normal into areas that are really pretty depraved. And you know, there's hundreds and hundreds of genres within the porn world of entertainment, if you will, that really gets into, you know, very quickly some extreme stuff, bestiality, you know, certainly child pornography or pedophilia, you know, some really violent S&M type stuff, which, you know, there will always be a class of people that says, you know, calls some of that normal. But again, there's also always a line for what's not normal. And really what it does is, as you move from what's considered sexual intimacy, you know, representation of healthy sexuality, out beyond these, you know, these barriers into what's considered to be more and more abnormal, then you're really objectifying and sexualizing people in a greater and greater way, to the point where you don't even see them as people, you just see them as objects. And that's the harmful effect that people don't realize starts right away when you're exposed to porn from the very beginning. So, you know, what level, where would you draw that line? When does it become unhealthy? Well, certainly we know that in terms of the frequency that you go to the material, if you're, you know, combining masturbation with pornography in that kind of traditional relationship of how the material stimulates you, and eventually that's really the triggering, you know, behavior associated with it to have orgasm and the dopamine release that comes with it. If you've kind of gotten into that routine and that ritual, and over time you will find that you have to go to either increasing amounts of the same material or to material that's more stimulating and more arousing. And that way you form really a pathological relationship with the material. Not unlike a gambling addict, you know, who just needs to put a bigger wager, or, you know, to stay at the table longer to be able to maintain the high. Or even, we know through studies, you know, drug addicts or alcoholics who become desensitized and have to go to, you know, accelerated behaviors to be able to get the same high. That's where we get into trouble. What's really changing everything is the fact that the material now that's out there, and extreme material, can be found so easily, and you can look at it totally anonymous, and basically the internet and new media and the digital, you know, frontier has changed everything from that standpoint, so that you can get a lot of exposure to some pretty extreme material and kind of leapfrog these different levels. Compared to, like, for me, I was raised, and, you know, my first exposure was Playboy magazine and, you know, print pornography. And there was a long time before, like, videos came along and all these other technological progressions. It took time for that to happen. The way I put it is, now a person can have that same addiction in a fraction of the time because of the media that's out there, and just because of the breadth and depth of what's available. So, in answer to your question, I think, yes, it's harmful. I think it's harmful at any level, because even casual recreational users of pornography are exposing themselves to material that carries with it an attitude and a belief system that inherently objectifies and sexualizes. So it's not just demeaning to women, but it's also demeaning to men.